we tend to think that spirituality is all about either like the mind and then the cosmos above, or we often equate spirituality with a specific religion. We've all been told stories about like this religion is the right one and that's your key to whatever salvation. I found that I began to have these spiritual experiences when I was able to safely be in my own body. That's what began to open things up. And it was through exploring my sensuality, exploring my spectrum of energy. It was through erotic and sensual dance.
Welcome back to Perspective Switch, where we talk about spirituality and self-development. Today we're in Austin, Texas with Tara.valkyrie.
Yes.
And she is an astrologer, artist through photography, the performing arts, and drawing. I've noticed that you love nature.
Yes.
And you are so expressive in all of your creations.
Thank you. Thank you. There's a quote, and I'm forgetting who it's by, but it's like, if you want to know what someone cares about, look at what they photograph. It's one of those things where when I first saw that quote, I was like, oh, okay, yeah, that makes sense. And then I didn't realize until I look at what I'm projecting out or what I see other people noticing that it's like, oh, yeah, yep, that is me.
Yeah. I've never heard that quote before, but I feel like it would tell, like, if you took someone's phone and scrolled through their
exactly.
photos,
Like, if
who is this person?
It's like nature and my dogs. And now my new cat.
So exciting.
Yes.
One of the reasons that I love podcasting so much is because I feel like every person that I talk to brings something different out of me. And I know that you do burlesque and you're very sensual and very empowered through this. For myself, I feel like I've shut down my sensuality and my sexuality. And the first time I ever wore makeup, my dad was like, screamed at me. He was like, you're a prostitute. And I was like, oh, I'm never wearing makeup ever again. Like, I'm not gonna learn how to do it, right? And now, like, I'm older, and in society, everyone pretty much wears makeup,
right?
And I don't know how to do it because I was always scared to put it on. I mean, that's besides the fact. I feel like deeper, it's like it just like shut me down to feeling beautiful, feeling sexy, feeling like I'm allowed to be attractive and attracted to other people.
Yeah, it's, in your experience, unfortunately, is so common. I also had the experience. I was kind of, my dad never yelled at me, but I was taught, it was actually more by the women in my family, that bad girls wear makeup. And it was like, wearing makeup draws negative attention. And it was always, if you do this thing, like makeup, it implies things about your moral character. And then also it draws attention toward you. And then if something bad happens, that is your fault because you drew the attention. So that your story resonates so much, because if you had told me at 15 that I would be this burlesque performer, this embodied sensuality teacher, I would have been incredulous, because I, one, was this hardcore tomboy. I realized, looking back, I realized that I was rejecting my femininity because I had been taught that it is dangerous, and within my upbringing that it's dangerous. And then of course we've all experienced the societal stories of it's undervalued. It's less than, say, the masculine. My journey to reclaim that, and to, I still catch myself sometimes when I'm getting ready for a show and I'm like, ooh, look at me, like I look good.
Yes.
There's still this little voice that I have to squish, and that's what I imagine. I imagine it's a little bug that I squish. There's still this voice that is like, oh, you shouldn't be flaunting that, or you shouldn't be, or either it's a you shouldn't from like an ego perspective, or sometimes it's even a this is unsafe. What if someone gets the wrong idea about what you're wearing or what you're doing? And it's a conscious thing I have to say to myself. If someone else gets the wrong idea, that is their responsibility. This is about me and my empowerment. Early on in my journey, I remember I was taking a pole dance class because I wanted to be taught how to be sexy. And I remember the teacher, we're doing this choreography, and within the choreography is self-touch. And I was having such a hard time. Like, I could run my hands through my hair, I could touch my belly, but I was avoiding my chest, I was avoiding my hips, I was avoiding touching myself on my inner thighs. And the teacher was so intuitive because she didn't single me out, but she just kind of said to the class, if you are having trouble touching yourself in a certain place, no one else should be touching you there. And if you don't take ownership of your body and your sexuality, someone else will.
Wow.
And yes. I mean, and I was just, I'm laying there in this, beautiful kind of dimly lit room, and my mouth is just hanging open. And it was so pivotal because I'd never heard it worded that way.
Yeah.
One, that it was mine, and two, that I needed to empower it or someone else was going to control it. And I think what has happened with what you've told me and what I've just said is we're kind of conditioned very young that someone else is in control of that, even though it's still our responsibility in a very toxic way, if that makes sense.
That was just so powerful. I was like, I don't even know what to say. Oh my God. Because it's just, it's everything. Like, just to take it out of that context and think of, like, if you don't empower yourself, someone else is going to control your power. And it's like, oh my God.
Oh, I know. It was, feel free to take a minute with that, because I know I had to take like 10 minutes with that. Yeah. And if you think about it, I was talking in the context of, our sensuality, our femininity, our own energy. But when you look at it, I mean, it bleeds out into every aspect of our society. So much is based on allowing something or someone else to control you. And when we look at marketing, all of it is you don't know what you're doing. You need this product or you need this service to tell you what to do. Or you're not in control, but don't worry, we'll take the reins, we'll keep you safe, and we'll take that choice away. And so it became this labyrinth, I know, when I started that journey. And that was 15 years ago that started, so.
Wow.
Yeah, time has flown.
Has your journey been mixed with spiritual awakenings and experiences?
Absolutely. I would say what's ironic is oftentimes we tend to think that spirituality is all about either like the mind and then the cosmos above, or we often equate spirituality with a specific religion. We've all been told stories about like this religion is the right one and that's your key to whatever salvation. I found that I began to have these spiritual experiences when I was able to safely be in my own body. That's what began to open things up. And it was through exploring my sensuality, exploring my spectrum of energy. It was through erotic and sensual dance, which at the time I assumed I was like, oh, I'm clearly doing something wrong because I'm, exploring my sexuality, and I'm not supposed to enjoy being sexual and having this spiritual experience when in fact, they are very linked, because our embodiment, our sensuality, our sexuality, that's creative energy, that's creative life force, and that's directly connected with the other realms. So yeah.
What do you think your experience when you didn't feel safe in your body, what actions were reflecting that?
I was very disconnected from my body. I remember being able to pride myself on, taking a lot of pain. I would push through injuries. I was a distance runner for a long time.
Okay.
I would push through injuries. I thought it was this point of honor, like how long I could go without eating at work. I mean, it was like really messed up stuff.
Yeah.
And I would just doubt myself constantly. I would be prone to anxiety because I would be overthinking decisions. I remember one incident. I remember I had just interviewed for this job, and on paper, the job sounded amazing. Like great benefits, great paycheck. Everything seemed nice about the job, but I kept feeling this like this heaviness in my stomach. And I looked back and I realized, oh, that was my intuition talking. I mean, quite literally, that was my gut talking, saying, hey, no, this isn't good. But I kept ignoring that because, intellectually, I thought, well, this looks good on paper. Everything that this interviewer is saying checks all the boxes. And then, of course, I start the job, and it ends up being horrible. And so when I was disconnected, I felt that, and then I just felt lost. I felt that I couldn't trust anything. And then I was just having a lot of doubts around, okay, what is my purpose? What am I doing here? And then I was trying to find satisfaction in kind of the very base level material realm. I was, spending money too much. I was seeking things out in just a very kind of like mundane physical way without like questioning if there's more.
Yeah.
And then I was getting sick a lot too. That was another big thing that I realized. I was sick all the time. Whether it was like a cold or a stomach flu, like if it was going around, I got it. So yeah, that was a big thing before I began to have these awakenings. And I think too, I remember being connected to the spiritual realm as a child. Naturally, I was curious, and I was like, oh, and I would try to talk to adults about what I was experiencing. Yeah. And they were like, oh, that's just your imagination, or that's not real, or that can't happen. And so I shut it down, which I think a lot of people.
What's one experience that you tried to talk to someone about?
I remember walking into this restaurant, and it's busy, and we're I'm waiting with my family, and we're trying to find a place to sit, and we are led over to this one corner booth. And I just remember getting hit with this energy of, it was just heavy and greasy and gross, and I could feel it in my body. And that's the other thing, is like when I have these experiences, I feel them very strongly in my body. And I didn't want to be there. And I was trying to tell my parents, and they're the parents of 2 young kids. We have an hour to eat lunch, and they're just kind of like, look, sit here, eat your food, do the thing. So I sit there, and I'm not enjoying it. And then I remember the rest of the day, I could just feel this heavy presence around me. And even, I was probably 6 or 7. And even at that age, I was aware that I'm feeling these emotions and they're not mine. I was happy before I came in here, and now I'm irritated, or now I'm angry. And I just remember it sticking with me, and trying to talk with my parents about it, later on in the day, and they're just like, no, you just need to get over it. Sometimes things happen in life, and you don't always get what you want. Because I think they viewed it as I was still sore about eating at this restaurant I didn't want to eat at. And I remember going to bed and being afraid of the dark for the first time, feeling this presence around my bed. And I knew that something had followed me home from the restaurant. I remember trying to go to sleep and having these nightmares, and then at one point I get so scared, and so I'm just kind of talking into the darkness, and I'm like, if anyone is there, someone help me, someone help me. And I remember feeling this presence, and I feel presences. I don't necessarily see them. Rarely, I have had experiences where I've seen things. But I remember feeling this warm presence come in, and I felt safe, and I was like, okay, I don't know what this is, but I remember feeling this presence walk around my bed, and whatever had been there was gone. I remember looking around trying to see if I could see anything, and I couldn't, but I just knew, okay, I'm safe. And I remember this entity, I remember just calling it an angel, standing at the foot of my bed for the rest of the night. I had woken up a few times during the night, and I could just feel them there.
Yeah.
And in the morning they were gone, and then after that, even though I wouldn't feel that presence, I just knew, okay, something else can, if I'm in trouble, something will come and protect me. And I learned more about it later on when I kind of restarted my journey into spirituality. But yeah, that's one experience as a kid that I had.
Wow, that's so profound.
Yeah.
I'm so grateful that you got to a place where you asked for help and help came.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like something that's so valuable for everyone to always remember is you can ask for help.
Yes. And that we have that power within us.
Yeah.
Of course, when I was 6, I didn't realize, like, oh, I have the power to ask for help. But yeah.
I really want to talk more about your empowerment journey.
Yeah.
And how that kind of unfolded.
It was definitely not, I woke up one day and was like, I would like to be empowered. I think like most humans, I thought that I was in power and had a great humbling experience, or several, I would say several. It probably began around 2008. I had started with I was in my early 20s, and I was coming out of my strict tomboy phase. I was trying to figure out, I realized, okay, there's no beating around the bush. I am in this, female body, and I, on some level, knew I wanted to explore that end of the spectrum. We have the entirety, society, we call it, the masculine to feminine spectrum. I like to call it action and alignment, because there's a lot of baggage with those words, masculine and feminine.
Yeah.
And so we're often conditioned to be very much in that action, that logic-based, that ego-based type energy. And so I knew on a subconscious level I needed to begin to explore the rest of the spectrum, but it was framed within my mind as I need someone to teach me to be sexy.
Yeah.
Because I need to be sexy in order to be desirable. Because if you are desired, you have value. It began with I was taking these erotic dance classes, these pole dance classes. I remember, because another thing too that we're often conditioned, especially being women or being in female perceived bodies, is we're inadvertently always comparing ourselves to each other. And we're like, oh, well, she's prettier than me, or she's got better this or better that. And I remember going in, what was so unique about this place was they did not have mirrors. You learned by you watched the instructor in the middle, and then you learned by doing the movement and feeling it in your body. If you told me then that this was the official start of my empowerment journey, I would not have believed. I was like, no, I'm learning to be sexy. I'm already empowered. And by coming back into my body and acknowledging a lot of the toxicity, a lot of the stories that we ingest without thinking.
Yeah.
And it goes back to childhood. We are praised for being compliant. We are praised for being good. And what good means is we yield. We are kind before we are bossy. We are being kind, being submissive, working always to find a solution, often at our expense. We're conditioned from very, very young. And then when we grow up, we continue that. We have these foundations. And my empowerment journey began with having to face that and to realize, too, an early step oftentimes where a lot of people get stuck is it's kind of like the stages of grief, if you've heard of those, where it's like first you're in shock, then you're in denial, and you're angry, depressed, all of that. And so I think what happens first is we're shocked. We're shocked at how much we have internalized. We might even be in denial. I know I was definitely there. And then oftentimes people get angry and they're looking for someone to blame. And the reality is most of the time, most of the people that are helping to condition us are actually not doing it maliciously. I mean, you know, obviously there's cases of abuse and of trauma. However, a lot of the stories I was told that took away from my empowerment were meant to protect me.
Yeah.
Don't wear makeup. Don't wear revealing clothes.
Yeah.
Don't walk like that. Don't do your hair that way, because you'll get attention from people, and then something bad could happen because of the thing that you did. The biggest part was unlearning that, coming home to myself, and then what started happening with that was when I came home to my physical body and began to unlearn the conditioning, unlearn the shame, acknowledge a lot of the trauma that I had sustained. What kind of made it crazy was then all of kind of the part of the empowerment was this great humbling of recognizing that there's so much more in the universe that is not easily explained, that we don't easily, we can't just explain away or find a logical explanation for. And so sometimes I struggle with finding the words for this, because my embodiment journey was also my journey into my spiritual experiences. And I had stopped, actually. I had started these classes in 2008. I had stopped about 6 months in because at the time I was teaching high school science. And if you talk to anyone in public education, that is quite a job. I just didn't have time for hobbies. I finally left that in 2012, came back to those classes, and then eventually became a teacher. And that's really when my empowerment journey was kind of fast-tracked, because when you are a teacher, if you're a good teacher, you're also a student.
Yeah.
And you are having to constantly look at your shadows.
Yeah.
You're having to look at where are you falling short within your own journey. Because you can't, if you're going to be ethical and responsible as a teacher, you cannot force your students to go somewhere that you have not been within yourself.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's what I feel like I'm doing. I'm constantly looking at my shadows, constantly
Yes.
like, what am I thinking now? Why am I thinking this? What do I believe about
Yes.
myself? And then also acknowledging that, like, if I'm feeling this,
Yep.
there's so many other people feeling this. And if I can get through this, I can show other people how to get through this as well.
Yes.
And I get to show them that we don't have to live like that.
Yeah. Yeah, and that is so powerful.
Yeah.
That is such a powerful gift, because I feel that especially now, there are so many people that are awakening. And I know in astrology, we have talked about, there's this massive global awakening going on, and people are waking up, and that sounds beautiful. Oh, they're waking up. And we know. I always amend it to, we're waking up in the dark.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
And, we're fumbling around. It's like waking up and the power's out in your house, and you're fumbling around for your phone, and you're just like, and of course, thinking about it, when you wake up in the dark, you're like, am I the only one in the dark, or is my whole street out? Like, what's going on? It's terrifying. It's terrifying. And a lot of people just want to pull the covers back over their head. They're like, I'm going to wait till the lights come back on.
Yeah. Oh my God.
But you sum it up so well that you're going through this, and it speaks to your power that you recognize, okay, I'm going through this. Other people are too. And then you say, how can I help?
Yeah.
How can I help these other people? Fortunately, I do think that there are a lot of people like you who are out there. Unfortunately, that's not who we're hearing about. If we pull up the internet or turn on the TV and look at the news, it's so it speaks to your own evolution, that you're also thinking, okay, how do we shed the light on what's going on for all of us, and how stepping into that light involves a lot of shadow work.
Yeah, and I'm pretty sure it's lifetime. Like, it doesn't. There's been so many instances where, like, I think that maybe I'll get to a point where I only experience light. And what I've realized is that I don't think that's why we're here. I think we're we're here to experience the spectrum, and like that's beautiful and that's okay, and that's our expression.
Yes, yes. And I think too what we're learning is shadow, the shadow side or the darkness isn't bad. It's just that which we have more trouble seeing. And we need both light and shadow because they balance each other. And oftentimes, and I think too, it's a constant cycle. Like what you said, we often begin our journey thinking, oh, okay, so I'm going to do all this shadow work and then I'm going to always be in the light and it'll be great from here on out. The reality is just like if you watch the phases of the moon, the shadow moves across the moon. I think our shadows are always shifting. And when we shine light on one thing, that's wonderful. But then it's a constant cycle of I've shined light on this, I'm in the light here. Now the shadow is elsewhere. And I'm focusing, okay, what's in shadow here? And shadow can mean, I interpret it as, yes, it's the stuff that we've had to bury. Whenever I teach or work with people, I try to always remind people that we don't want to look at our shadows with judgment, because sometimes something's in shadow because at the time that it was occurring, we did not have the capacity to deal with it. We were in survival mode, or we're focusing on something else. When we shine that light, it's just seeing what's there and seeing how to integrate that, to release, to heal. And then when something else is in shadow, it's almost like taking the stigma and the fright out of looking into our shadows. Because oftentimes, we've all done this too, where maybe you're in your bedroom and there's a shadow and you're like, oh my gosh, what is that? And then you turn on the light and you're like, oh, that's a pile of laundry that I haven't dealt with yet, And so that's just kind of what, we need both of them in order to find balance. Because we're also not these rigid binary creatures. We're in always this constant dynamic movement. And that's part of the beauty of having this life in this lifetime, in my opinion.
Something that just came to my mind is that sometimes the shadow protects itself by saying, like, you can't look at me, like, this is too much, you can't handle it. So then that's why we keep like steering away. And that's been my biggest challenge, is to like sit with it, look at it, be like, okay, I can do this, I can see this isn't gonna last forever. I'm not gonna get sucked into it, it's not gonna become my life.
I love what you said about I can see this will not last forever. I think we often I think that's very much kind of a thing that sits in the back of our minds as humans, that here's this overwhelming thing and that it will draw us in and we'll never get out. And once we sit with it, we realize, oh, okay, this is not as giant, or as, this is not as deep a chasm as we thought it was.
And I feel like I'm also learning to not get so sucked into it as like, this is who I am. It's starting to become more of just an awareness of this experience, like awareness with compassion.
Yes. Oh, I love that.
Yeah.
I love that. That's such an empowered way of looking at it. I think that's also where we get stuck sometimes along our evolution, is we're aware of this shadow, or we address this past trauma or something, and then it becomes all-consuming. One, it takes power and courage to first face it, and then it takes another hit of that courage to not let it consume us. To be like, yeah, that happened. That's a part of me. It's not my entire story. I'm moving through it. I'm integrating it. I'm releasing it. I'm learning from it. I'm taking the wisdom, but I'm not letting that define me.
What do you feel like your biggest challenge was on your empowerment journey?
I had several. I think one of the biggest ones was I've always felt like I struggled to belong. That was a big part of my journey growing up. And then it has felt like, it's like I'll do, the buzz term in our community is like doing the work. I'll do the work, and then I would kind of level up to the next phase of empowerment in my journey. And then I would start to worry, like, what are my friends going to think of me? What will my family think of me?
Yeah.
What are these people that I care about? What are they going to think about me? What if they don't like this new me? What if they call me out on these things? Maybe I should step back into my smaller skin. And that's been the biggest thing, is this trusting myself and trusting that I will find my people, and that, if I outgrow relationships, it's not necessarily that they were bad or I am bad, that it's just part of that natural evolution. When you're on that journey, there are aspects that are very lonely. Even if people are not, it may not be something as dramatic as someone's like, well, I'm not your friend anymore because you're now into astrology, or you're now, channeling these entities or anything like that. But sometimes it can just feel like, being alone in a crowded room. You're like, okay, this community or this group used to feed me, and now I feel kind of isolated. That's been a big thing. I think another thing too is sometimes having to deal with, especially with family, their perceived hurt. It's almost like when you're growing and you're realizing, okay, I know with my family, I remember having discussions about things that were said to me to protect me, for example. And when I began to explain, like, I know that was meant to protect me, but it actually hindered me. It actually hurt me. And I know that you had the best of intentions, but let's reword that for the next generation, them feeling hurt and taking it personally. And so I think just part of the not falling into nice girl mode was one of the everyday challenges with my empowerment journey. And also having the courage to just express myself, especially with the performing, the burlesque performing, expressing my sensuality and my sexuality, because of how that is still interpreted by mainstream society. That continues to be a challenge. I'm very lucky to have a supportive friend group, supportive community immediately around me. But I know when I step out of that and just on, the internet in general and our country in general, it's not as accepting. And I know that I am very privileged. I am a cis female. I do not face a cis white female. I do not face a lot of the challenges that other members within, say, the performing community have experienced. And so that's been a big thing. And then the third one would just be self-doubt. Self-doubt. It still is there. There's always, that I had said earlier, there's always kind of a voice in my head that I have to consciously, actively, squash and talk through around just not doubting myself, trusting myself. Because a lot of empowerment is going against the grain of everything that we've been taught and just the macro structures of our society.
Yeah.
I would say that's a daily challenge.
Wow, I feel like I resonate with everything that you just said. Growing and evolving.
Yes.
And
leaving people behind inadvertently.
yeah. I hate saying that.
I know.
But literally me and Jacqueline just talked about the same
Oh
thing.
my goodness.
Yeah. And it's one of those things is when you do evolve and the people around you aren't evolving as well, it's you're gonna have to move on.
Yeah.
And it's not gonna be as fulfilling as it used to be. I love talking about it because these are, I feel like, things that happen to people and they might feel like they're alone in this.
Yes. And I will say that the leaving people behind, the reason why that needs to be talked about, and I'm so glad that you and Jacqueline talked about this as well, because from a biological perspective, that hits us as humans on a very primal level. We are, even if we're introverts, we are inherently social creatures. So being isolated from the group, whether that's an overt rejection, whether that's just feeling isolated, our brain equates that we still operate on this very old system of if we are not in community, our life is in danger. That's why rejection sucks so bad. That's why when, if we get dumped, if someone doesn't like us, I mean, that's why it bothers us so much. That's why we have such issue with it in our society. And on this particular journey of evolution and connecting with our spirituality is, in an everyday sense, it registers as almost like a death sentence. And that can be really scary. And our brain's one job is to keep us alive. And that is extremely powerful. And it can be really hard to, be connecting with these other realms if you have this part of your brain that's like, hey, we're in danger because we don't have our community anymore. And yeah, I will say that if this is something that you experience, you are not alone. You are not alone at all. This is something that all of us go through.
Yeah.
And it's so important. I'm a broken record about a lot of things, but this is one of those things that I'm like, no, you're not alone. You're not alone in being alone.
And then also the trusting yourself. I feel like I just like literally 1 week ago I had this experience and I realized that I trusted myself. Mm-hmm. And I was looking at myself in the mirror like, holy shit, like I trust you. Mm-hmm. And I never felt that in my entire life, that I freaking trust myself.
Yeah.
And then like I go back into like all these different experiences and like, well, I did this and I did this and I did this and this is all really courageous. Mm-hmm. And I went into the fear and I traveled and I got rid of stuff and I got a new job and like new friends, new environment. Mm-hmm. All this stuff is just building upon it. And I'm like, oh my God.
Yeah.
But I can't wait to see how my future will unfold now that I feel that I trust.
Yes.
And I also think that as we follow those more empowering thoughts, the other ones get a little bit quieter. Like the doubt, like I hear the doubt, but I'm like, yeah, but. Yeah, but. I hear you.
Yeah. But. Yeah, no, that's absolutely how, because what you did there and you trusted, yes, there's that immediate, like, okay, what's going to happen next? Because I think we've been so conditioned to immediate gratification.
Yes.
But what you started doing was you jumped into a new pattern, which one, that's going to inspire fear in our brains. New pattern, I don't know what's going to happen. But then that is a rewiring. Okay, I trusted myself. And then all of these other things started to happen that were amazing. And I also love that you're also rewiring your brain patterns when you hear that doubt and you're like, yeah, but guess what? Trusted myself and this awesome thing happened. And that's big because that also ripples outward. We're seeing that on the macro scale too. One big example that I'm seeing is like this pushback with, we had this big global upheaval with COVID-19. And right now, if you look on the news, there's this battle going on between these companies who are like demanding that people go back to the office, and then there's people that are pushing back, and they're like, this is what works for me. And that's a really big, obvious example. But you can see that there's this pushback going on. It starts though with little decisions. And it can be, I think the challenge too with trusting ourselves is sometimes we might get immediate gratification from that. Oftentimes, though, we don't. We just have to trust that we're going on this new path and it's going to take us where we need to go.
Yeah.
And that's scary.
Yeah. Especially because every day is like walking down a tunnel. Well, like, so we think we know what's going to happen tomorrow. Like, of course. And that's probably what makes us comfortable in our, like,
yes.
I still work in corporate. So it's like, what makes me comfortable? Like, oh, I'm going to go to work today and I know what I'm going to do. But like, ultimately, we really are walking down a dark tunnel that we don't know what's ahead of us. And then when we do take bigger leaps of faith, it's just even more apparent of like, I don't know what's about to come. And so I'm trying to shift from like, this is scary to this is exciting.
Yes.
Every other time I've done this, something really cool and amazing, profound has happened.
Yeah. Yeah. And that is so powerful. When you had said, shifting from this is scary, my mantra is, you know, instead of saying this is scary, is this is an adventure.
Yes.
I've had to tell myself, because I was raised in a family of warriors where it was always about like, oh, well, something bad might happen.
Yeah.
And so I had to tell myself, like, okay, I'm going to do this thing. Either it's going to be really great, or I'll at least have a good story.
Yes.
And not even bring into like, what if something bad happens? Because I love the way you describe that. We're really in a dark tunnel, because you just said, okay, I'm going to go to work. This is what's going to happen at work. I mean, we've always lived in this world. We love to trash talk the modern world and how horrible it is. But really, when you look back through history, there's always the potential for things to happen. Really, it's just nothing is guaranteed. Mm-hmm. So we might as well have this outlook of this is an adventure. This is exciting.
Yeah.
And seeing where that takes us. Because in terms of energy, if we're in this mindset of openness and like, cool, this is an adventure.
Yeah.
That's going to draw a higher vibration than if we're in fear or if we're in dread. We've all had those days where like we have a bad day, we wake up late or something and then we're stressed out and then like it just keeps snowballing.
Yeah.
And that's just because we're disconnected from ourselves. We're automatically assuming that something bad is going to happen. Mm-hmm. And when we shift that perspective, that starts to turn things around.
Yeah, exactly.
So, yeah.
I love talking about adventure because I love when I go out. I haven't completely stopped partying, and
Right.
like the thing that I love about it is that it's an adventure. Like I'm like, I don't know where I'm gonna go. I don't know who I'm gonna meet. I don't know what we're gonna. It's just
Right.
like such a fun adventure, and like especially just when I get to Uber somewhere and I just feel so free. Like I can do whatever I want. I can go wherever I want. So to take that
Yeah.
like excitement that I love about that and to put it into my life, like
Yes.
this is an adventure. I
Yes.
don't know who I'm gonna meet or what we're gonna talk about and how it's all gonna unfold. That's something that I miss about going out every weekend.
Yeah.
It's because like, it felt like this unknown. It felt like this excitement of like, okay, like what energy am I in tonight? What am I gonna attract to me tonight?
Right,
'Cause
yeah.
That's actually how I think now. Like,
Yeah, I
I'm
love
feeling
that.
really good today. Like,
Yeah.
I'm so excited. I'm gonna attract some really cool people.
Yeah, I love that mentality. I'm that way with traveling.
Yeah.
I'm
That's
yeah.
how I feel right now.
Yeah.
'Cause I'm traveling in Austin.
Yeah. And that's such a good mentality.
Yeah.
And I didn't realize how much, and I don't know if you've experienced this, I didn't realize how much I have shifted that mentality, because my previous state, I was always worrying about things. Now, it's like I remember I had this pivotal experience back in 2019. I got invited to teach at this yoga retreat in Thailand. And I was going to have to fly. It was the first time I was going to fly internationally by myself, go to a country I'd never been to by myself. I was going to meet up with people, but I had to get there by myself. And of course, there was a part of me that was like, oh no, like what if?
Yes.
And then I was like, you know what? It's an adventure. And I remember emailing the leader of the retreat, and I just said, okay, I just need the itinerary. Where do I need to fly into? How do I get from the main hub out to this beautiful island where we're going to have this retreat? And they sent me the itinerary, so I knew how I needed to book everything. And then once I had taken care of that, I was just like, this is an adventure. And since then, that has sparked several international travel trips where I'm like, I'm going to this place I've never been before to do things I've never done before.
Yes.
There are people that I can tell it's meant well, but they're like, well, how do you navigate this? You're a woman traveling alone. And it's like, okay, I'm smart about things. Like I let people know where I am. I send people my itinerary. And also, for the most part, though, I'm just like, it's an adventure.
Yeah.
It's like I have my safety harness on. I know people I can call, places I can go to if I'm ever unsafe. But like once that's in place, I'm just like, let's just experience this.
Yeah.
And that's so much fun. I love, I don't party as much as I used to, mainly because it's like my rhythm has shifted.
Yeah.
I tend to wake up much earlier now, and I go to sleep earlier. And then also I think a lot of us are getting back into the groove of gathering after it's basically a 3-year kind of weird hiatus that we had. Even now, if I catch myself being like, oh, I've got to go out, I've got to do this stuff, I have to network, I'm like, no, it's an adventure. It'll be fun.
Yes.
Because also, I'm empowered. I have the power to leave if I don't like the energy,
Yeah.
if I don't like what's going on. I am not under obligation to stay somewhere I don't want to be.
Yeah.
And that's a little bit very powerful thing.
If you could say one message to every single person in this world, what would that message be?
Trust yourself, because you have much more power to make a difference than you realize, and it starts small. We often have the guru mindset in our world that you have to be this guru, this big person. It starts with tiny acts of empowerment and acts of kindness. It's just one little thing. To shorten all that down, trust yourself and don't doubt your power.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
And how can people find you?
They can find me on Instagram mostly. I have 2 main Instagram accounts. There's tara.valkyrie, and then my performing account, which is lilith.allure. And also on Facebook somewhat, but mainly Instagram is the best way to get a hold of me.